this video, I'm going to show you how ShoelaceMVC uses Entity Framework's code first in order to streamline the database creation and update process that you normally run into whenever you're building an application. If you go into the membership folder, you'll see the Shoelace context. And if you're familiar at all with the Entity Framework code first and how that works, you'll know that the Shoelace context class is your database context, which is the umbrella object that keeps track of all of your tables and is essentially the object that link queries off of and keeps track of persistence and things like that. Underneath here, you'll have multiple DB sets, and these are essentially your tables in your database that get generated. In the newer versions of ShoelaceMVC, you'll see this default constructor added. And it also calls the base class constructor before this gets executed and passes in this phrase ShoelaceMVC. Now this actually takes away a lot of the magic that most people got confused with. See, without this, Entity Framework code first assumes that your database is going to be generated and that if it's not generated, that it'll already be located at your local SQL Express instance. This is probably not the case for most people, especially whenever you go to production. So essentially what this is, this matches up with another line in your web config, in particular your connection string for your database. So you'll see here that the name of this connection string is ShoelaceMVC. That matches up with this parameter here. Now here it's automatically defaulting to SQL Express and ShoelaceMVC, which is local to my machine. And that's fine for me. But whenever you go to production, you'll want to change the database there to whatever your production database is. And that's essentially all that you need to know in order to change your connection string for your database. Now if I go to data connections, I'll go ahead and check it out here. SQL Express. If I look for databases that are in here, you'll see that I don't have a ShoelaceMVC database here, and that's cool. Out of the box, whenever you first download ShoelaceMVC from the GitHub project, which runs automatically, or whenever you get yours working. Now, the magic of Entity Framework code first is that it does a lot of the database updating and management work for you, especially when you're first starting out and you have a clean slate to work off of. Because a lot of times, particularly developers who work on our own, we don't have a DBA to manage all the SQL scripts. It's not that we can't do it, it's just that it takes a lot of time and it's not really that fun. So starting off, we'll go to log in and we'll use demo credentials here because if Entity Framework code first doesn't detect a database, then it'll create it for us, and if it does, then it'll just do a query. And by default, we don't have a database, so we need to do some sort of action on the database in order for code first to do that generation. So you see here we've logged in as our demo account. And we're all set up, so we'll close this back out and go back into the Server Explorer real quick. Check out SQL Express again. And you'll notice we have our ShoelaceMVC context here, so we can connect to it and see our roles in our users table and then the intermediate table that it's created for us. And then here is the Entity Framework code first IDs that keeps track of the versions of your database, so that way code first, when it updates, it knows exactly where it's coming from and where it's going to. So it's essentially the same thing as the DB migrate from Ruby on Rails. So now that we've got our database all set up, a couple other things that we need to kind of go over is the code first context init class. So this is where you can seed your database. A lot of times when you're building an application really quickly, it's really good to use unit tests to make sure that Any changes that you make don't break previous features that you've added. But whenever you're trying to build an application really quickly, and especially whenever you're dealing with the UI, you want to have at least some dummy data in the database. That way when you're working on it and everything's still messy, that you have some live data going through your app to know how things display correctly. And this class has an override method. It extends the drop create database always shoelace context. So that is this class over here. So this is just a class that kind of adds a little bit of functionality, particularly this seed method. So this gets called whenever your database gets created. And what we're doing right now is we're adding that demo account to our application. That way we can log in as demo whenever we first run ShoelaceMVC. You can also just use this context here to go down and add things however you want. So you can seed your database this way, add some dummy data to get the ball rolling a little bit quicker. Now the last thing that I want to talk to you about regarding the database is Entity Framework migrations. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. If you're familiar with Ruby on Rails, essentially what this does is it's a really quick way to update your database with any changes that you make to your entities in your database context. So the first thing that you'll want to do is go to References and Manage NuGet Packages. Now, eventually, I believe this is going to be rolled up into the Entity Framework. You'll have to check on Scott Hanselman's blog. He has a lot of information about this and kind of where it's going. But the first thing that you want to do is search for Entity Framework Migrations. Once you're here, go to the current one, which is Entity Framework.migrations, and install it. Sign your life away. And the reason that I did not add this by default is I believe that it's eventually going to be rolled up into the Entity Framework, the original package. So if that is the case, then we won't need to add the .migrations in the future, especially since it's currently in beta. So once you have the package installed, go down to the Package Manager console. So you normally will add NuGet packages this way, but now you have an extra command called Update Database. So it failed to build. Whenever you add the NuGet package, it also adds this extra little class here. And what this is the configuration for the database migrations. You're going to need to add your context here. So we have ShoelaceMVC dot shoelace context. Save everything. Now we're good. Okay, we're going to go back over here and do Update Database. And what this will do is this will essentially go out and create our database, recreate it if you specify it to. There's a lot of different options that you can have. But one of the coolest things is whenever you change something, like if we go over here to role, or let's go to user, add our email address, and we'll add a new string email friend. We'll add a friend's email just in case they forget their password. We can email one of their friends if their main email doesn't work. Go ahead and have the same data annotations on that. So now we've officially made a change to one of our entities. So the database context and the database that we currently have out there are going to be different. So normally what we would have to do is write the SQL scripts to get everything updated, and go into production is a little bit of a hassle. But the cool thing about this is you can go and specify to either update it directly, which is what update database does. It just goes out, finds your connection string and where the database is that you're currently using, and essentially updates that database without losing data. And if it's going to lose data, then this will fail. So you don't have to worry about that. But the cool thing is you can actually do another thing. Okay, so this failed, and this means that we need to go update the automatic migrations setting in the configuration for migrations. I think I have it open here. Just change this to true. Now we're ready. You can specify a script parameter, and essentially what this does is it goes out and figures out the changes between your context and changes that you've made to your entities and the database that is out in wherever your config file is, whether it's production or test or your local SQL Express. It'll find the differences in the values, and you'll see here that it actually created an alter table script. So it just makes that change that we made. So we have the email friend and the different data annotations that we add to it. It's a 250 character length and things like that. It generates a script so you can actually update this table separately. So let's say that for instance you're building an application at work, and the only person who can touch the production database is the DBA. That's their deal, and it's very political, and they don't want you touching their baby. You can actually use this to generate a script for each update, and then just send them the script, and that way they're happy, they can do their thing, and you're happy because it generates all of this the SQL for you that normally you would either have to write by hand or use some kind of other special tool to get done. So that's a really, really powerful feature that's in Entity Framework. It's currently in beta, but as far as I've seen, it's pretty well good to go right now. So you can save versions of it, whatever. If you want to put it into source control, that's cool. So that concludes the database portion of the ShoelaceMVC overview. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll try to go more into detail about any particular area on it. Thanks.